Good morning and welcome to the Morning Spotlight Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Ham. We are coming to you, as always, from the Spotlight Studios in Morristown, New Jersey, but this is part of the larger PodMax global event. My guest today runs a digital media company focused on business and lifestyle designs. He's the author of five books, including a two-part children's series. He's the host of the Enhancing the Human Experience podcast, Big Ideas, and hashtag On the Move with Mark Phillips. He's also the owner of Focus and Flow, a product and apparel line that carries a wide assortment of items designed to help people become more conscious creators. He's coming to us from Boise, Idaho, Mark Phillips. Mark, welcome.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, Michael. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming on. So this is a little bit different than, like, as we were saying before we got on here, this is a little bit different than a guest we would traditionally have on the show, but I'm cool with it. And I was looking through a lot of your stuff. So the one thing that I need to ask before we get going, is there anything that you don't do? Author, blogger, podcaster, YouTube creator. I didn't have enough time between last night and this morning to go through all the stuff. Is there anything that you don't do?
Well, there are a lot of things. Yeah, to answer that question, yes, there are a lot of things. I just like to create things, and so which can be a blessing and a curse, depending on how you harness it. But I like to do a lot of things. I think life is just there's so many fun things to do. So yes, there are, but
right, yeah, yes, there are, but okay, so. So for everybody, because you're coming from Idaho, the majority of my listeners, because this is a New Jersey-based show, a lot of my connections are in New Jersey here. Let's get to know you a little bit. So tell us a little bit more about yourself, kind of your background and how you got here.
Absolutely. Well, I started off kind of in I studied architecture and design in college, eventually ended up getting an environmental psychology type degree. And I really loved the design. I love to design things, make things, create things. And for maybe 15, 20 years, I worked in the design and space planning field for commercial office furniture. And I loved that. But eventually I realized that I kind of reached a ceiling. I kind of projected out 20 years and I looked at it and said, okay, is this going to get me where I want to be? And I realized that it wasn't. And so I kind of, as many people do, midlife, midstream, kind of pivoted and did some assessing who I am, what I want to do, what I want to build a business around. And then that's what started this journey right now, which I'm, basically in the content space, entertainment / media with courses and books, et cetera. So, my background is in the creative industry. And then it just kind of did a pivot and baked everything that I was and knew into this new venture. I saw so many people doing it. So I just thought, I'm going to dive in and take this opportunity. So.
Right. So talk about like what is what you do? That's a weird question, but
Hey, and I get it. Yeah, like so many of us, and maybe you can relate to this. To answer your question, what I feel it is now, because it is always evolving and always being shaped and changing a little bit. What I feel it is now is really entertainment and media company that then on the back end has books and courses and products, digital products, et cetera, that help people get what they want. It's basically sharing best practices for living. That's the core idea of the podcast. There is a large spiritual foundation too. One of the core tenets of my business is we're spiritual beings enjoying a human experience, which Wayne Dyer talked about, and a lot of people have talked about it. But it's basically bridging that gap, the spiritual and the physical. So in a sense, that's where I'm at now. Not too different from where I started, with the books and Kindle books and stuff like that, but it's definitely moving more towards definitely content, media, entertainment, and stuff like that.
So you're working directly with people or
I don't have a consulting component. Okay. All of my stuff is courses and books, because I really do want to create the media and the entertainment and the content. Like I said, I am a podcast host myself. So it's not necessarily one-on-one. I just didn't feel that fit for me at the moment. It may change in the future. Who knows? I've gone back and forth, but.
Okay. So let's talk about the stuff that you do. So let's start with the podcast. I just rattled off in your bio 3 podcasts that you do. So do you do 3?
One podcast, and then the other things are video content series. All
right, and those are across your YouTubes and everything else. Okay,
right.
So talk about take us through the types of stuff that you put out for people.
Sure.
What is the educational side on your end?
Sure, absolutely. Enhancing the Human Experience was my first piece of content. That's the podcast, started in 2017, and essentially what that is sharing best practices for living. When I first launched the podcast, I knew I wanted it to be a strong, a platform to share other people's knowledge, right? Basically connect and share information, share knowledge like we're doing. And so, because I always loved interviewing people and I always loved hearing their stories, and we learn so much when we connect with one another. And so that was what I first started in 2017. And, 3 years later, it's still a core component. But what I realized was that I wanted to create more. I wanted to do more. And video was the way that I wanted to do that in. And so I started diving into more YouTube. To be honest, I was terrified of video when I first started. I don't know. Maybe everyone is.
I mean, I was the same way. Yeah.
Were you really?
Yeah. I mean, so I started the Morning Spotlight this year. So it started out as a LinkedIn video series. We're getting, off of you, and now we're talking about me.
No, I was going to ask you about your experience. Yeah. Please go ahead.
So I started the Morning Spotlight in May of 2020. It started as a LinkedIn video series. So I would at the beginning of COVID, basically here in New Jersey, everything shut down. There was nothing to do. And I sell title insurance for a living in the real estate industry. So all I do is go out and meet with people and go to events and go to lunches and go to drinks. Couldn't do any of that, obviously. So I started running virtual networking events. We would do those every Tuesday at 5 p.m. And we did that for 12 straight weeks, which was impressive that we were able to go for that long. 13 straight weeks. Impressive that we were able to go for that long. Depressing that we had to go for that long, but it was a good group of people. But I just remember like the first couple times just doing the virtual networking events, just being on camera and talking just like we're doing right now was terrifying. And then like the more you got, because it was just like so uncomfortable. I could walk up to somebody on the street and strike up a conversation with them, but doing this just felt a lot different. It's like I'm talking to an inanimate object, even though you're talking back to me. Mm-hmm. And then I got better at it, was getting a lot of leverage on, decided to get a lot of traction on LinkedIn, decided to leverage that into what the Morning Spotlight originally was, which was a LinkedIn video series where I would interview people like 5 minutes, networking partners, clients, friends that had businesses here in New Jersey, just to kind of talk about what it is that they do. And then did that for 12 straight weeks, did 60 episodes of that because I would do one every single day, which was getting to be a bear to keep track of schedule. And because I'm head chef and chief bottle washer over here. So this is me. Like everything I do it's all me. So I decided to transition it into what the Morning Spotlight is now, which is just more of a traditional podcast, which we obviously have the audio side. We do a video like we're doing right now. This is why I have the studio and the merch and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's kind of the journey of the Morning Spotlight. But to your point, at the beginning, doing on-camera stuff, because I was just so not used to it, was hard for me to figure out like how to do it the right way. And even I look at some of the original Morning Spotlight videos that I had posted, disasters. I mean, they looked okay at the time, but knowing what I know now and being as comfortable doing this as I am now, it's not even close. You know what I mean?
Well, I do. Well, kudos to you. It sounds like you just dived right into video and audio at the same time. Is that accurate?
It was originally video. It was just video. So I would just post, right onto LinkedIn, the 5-minute video. And then eventually was like, I'll just start going across as many mediums as I can. So I started the social media pages. I started the YouTube page. I started everything just to kind of get everything out there all the time, because the LinkedIn videos, for as unprofessional as I was, and I don't mean that like I was, cursing and like, drinking while I was doing it, right? But it was just like, it wasn't as didn't look as good, and I wasn't as comfortable as I am now. And but those were very successful from a LinkedIn standpoint. They would get like 500 to 1,500 views every single day, and that's I was like, holy crap, like this is going great.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So
I mean, you had a high level of feedback, and you were giving value right out the gate. That's impressive. Not everyone has that. Not everyone gets that.
Yeah. So, all right. So let's get back to you, because you are on my show. So, I want to learn more about you. So, the one thing I'm going to backtrack, and we are all over the place, but I don't care, because this is my show and I just do it my own way. But, the one thing I do want to ask is, so you have this career that you're going through, and I know that you said you projected out 20 years, and you kind of saw that like the growth maybe wasn't there that you wanted. So this is something that obviously you had a background in, I guess, because you studied it in college, right? But like, why this? Like, why do you go like bet on yourself, start putting together all this content and make that your opportunity to grow where you feel fit? Is it just because like you have more control over it? It would take us through that.
Yeah, well, I'll have to answer that in two ways. But one, that's an awesome question, and I want to share the reason. So when I was at that point, and I was like, okay, do I stay on this road in the space planning and design industry, which I love, working with awesome people, awesome customers, but I knew it wasn't going to get me where I wanted to be from a lifestyle standpoint, financially, et cetera, and the freedom. And so when I came back to my core, I'd studied enough and learned enough from people, and I guess had, that divine inspiration of, okay, like, what do you build a business around? Like, what is valuable? What do you want to serve? And I knew enough to build it around something that I loved, because I'd done many different things prior to that where I've built little things or designed little things or made businesses around things that weren't ultimately meaningful and fulfilling on a deep level, and they crashed. So I knew enough to build something that was core foundational. And I guess I should say, even though I studied design and architecture in college, when I wasn't in that section of the library, I was in the section of the library with self-help and Wayne Dyer and Leo Buscaglia and Louise Hay. And I was reading those books voraciously, right? To basically to solve my own problems and be a better human being, because no one comes in with all the answers and just like smooth and silky smooth through life, right? So we want to be better.
Don't you hate those kind of people? Oh my God.
I do secretly,
yeah,
no,
deep down,
deep down, Yeah. But so I knew that I had this, I call it like a closet personal development kind of addiction or junkie. And so I said, I'm going to build a business around that. I mean, it's something I love. It's something I know about, because I also go back to stuff Mark Cuban says, and all these business gurus. They say, hey, build a business around something you know, and where you put effort in, and where you have some basis. And so that's essentially what I did, really not knowing what was going to happen, where it was going to go. And so when I started, that was really what I was doing, and it still is. But as I've gone on my journey, that's kind of flip-flopped, and now I spend like 80% of my time building content and doing marketing and branding and stuff like that, and then 20% building courses and stuff around that. It's still the foundation, right. But that's why I chose that, is because it had always been a part of me, like a side closet thing for those years. And I thought, okay, I'm going to bring this online now, because I want to build something with longevity. I don't just want to, see what's hot in the marketplace now, and go for it, because I knew it wouldn't last.
Right. Okay. So, so you decide to make this jump. I'm curious, because this Morning Spotlight, everything that I've done in 2020 has just been a reactionary thing, just because it was like out of necessity. So like I needed to keep my face and my voice, for better or worse, in front of as many people as I possibly could. So I had no plan. And like, I'm very flattered when people say like, oh, your marketing plan is tremendous. And I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I am just taking as much stuff, throwing it against the wall and seeing what sticks. And if it sticks, great. We keep going with that. And if it doesn't, we move it to the side. So take us through like how you set up the plan because I'm interested in that, because as somebody that's doing some stuff that's somewhat similar, like we're both putting content out there, and I have no plan. So I'm interested to see, like, when you decided to make this jump, how did you put that plan together? What was like the first thing you did?
The very first thing I did, like I said, because I was deathly afraid of video back in 2017. I mean, I shouldn't say that. My first video is live up on YouTube from 2013, which ironically enough is not my cringiest video. It's actually okay. I've got plenty others that we won't discuss here. But so, I mean, I guess I had gotten onto video, but it was more at a small scale. I knew I couldn't like launch in video, because one of the common themes in my life is baby steps. Like I always get where I'm going to go, but from the outsider, or to those people we talked about earlier, it's looking like I'm moving at a turtle's pace, but I'm making forward progress. But I started with the podcast, and I just, it was one step. And I didn't know, I kind of think that life is like this, like we take a step and in a direction that feels good, that we're inspired to, and then another stepping stone appears next to that. And it just kind of what we walk our way through. Sometimes I think if we try to project too much and plan it all out, I do a little bit of that, but I also do a little bit of the micro stuff too. Don't get me wrong. I have a big vision in my mind, but I try to do what feels the next step that feels right. And at that time in 2017, I only saw the podcast. I didn't see any video things coming. I didn't see any product and apparel line coming. I didn't see any courses coming. I only saw the podcast. That was then going to drive traffic to my then Kindle books. And that was as far as I saw, even though, I was just moving forward in that way. But at that time, I didn't have the big vision that I have now. As I'm walking more and getting more confident and getting more like capable in this space, the vision, I work on that vision a lot more. And I think about that a lot more because it seems more, I always think like as we move toward our vision kind of moves towards us and they kind of come into alignment and they become more clear.
Right.
So that's kind of where it was. But when I first started, no, it was simply the podcast, simply to drive traffic to the books.
Okay. Books. Let's talk about the books. You got 5 books. I don't even think I've read 5 books. I'm a big Spark Notes, Cliff Notes guy back in, high school and college. Let's talk about the books. So you have 5 books, a couple children's books. Talk us, what was the first book that you wrote?
The first book that I wrote was actually, back to the baby step theme, a book of quotes, 101 quotes about our true nature. It's called Boundless Joy. And it was, again, a baby step into the Kindle space because I saw other creators or other authors making money there. And I thought, okay, here, I'm going to package up what I know and love, and I'm going to try this. So it was, again, a straight up baby step into that space. And that was in 2013. That was like my first foray into this business, essentially.
Okay. All right. And then when do you start actually like putting pen to paper and writing your own content for these books?
Sure. So that was the next book, which is called The Alchemy of Despair, which is all about ways to transform sadness and suffering into happiness and joy. And that was one that I wrote. It has chapters. It has, essentially 17 of these ways. And that was it grew out of my own frustration with struggling with the mind and the ego. We come into conflict with other people. We lose something, we get sad, those kind of things. I was like, okay, I'm not playing this game anymore. So it was kind of like bringing up the big guns to fight that silly mind things we go through that detract from our happiness and joy. So that was book 2.
Okay. All right. And then what are the rest?
The rest are, it's called Just Be It, The Secret to Having What You Want in Life, which is essentially being, right? The equation, be, do, have. I think in our culture, in our society, we focus a lot on the doing and the action, which is awesome. But what I found in my experience is the being really feeds into the action. And when we get the right self-concept, the right state of mind, or the right state of self-image, it makes taking the action so much more effortless. And I think a lot of people hammer it out. I know I've done it, taking that action, and they don't focus on that being. So that was the next book. And then the last 2 books were a 2-part children's series, which essentially, by the way, I should say, all of these books solved problems that I had. Everything I really create is all, I'm my number one person.
Right.
Whenever I'm speaking to someone in a video or whenever I'm speaking in a podcast, I love hearing what the guests say because I want to learn. All the books have solved problems that I've had at various points in my life. And I'm saying, hey, if I have a problem, maybe someone else does too. The children's books were the books that I wanted to read as a kid. I had a great childhood. I got everything that I needed from my parents and my surroundings. But if I could go back, I would give myself these 2 books because, kids need to know that too. Their self-image is the foundation of everything they're going to do and have in life.
Yep.
And so it's a rhyming story. It's meant to kind of get in the brain and click so these kids can carry it with them through their whole lives.
Amazing. Yeah. I would definitely agree with that. Like I think we had probably similar childhoods. But I definitely agree with like the self-image thing. And that was something that, it took a while to figure out like what that actually was. And still,
it's not talked about.
And I don't think you ever actually figure it out. Like,
Right.
I mean, I'm of the opinion that like, it's just a never ending process. It just kind of evolves over time. Like me now is a lot different than me just a couple years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, more. So I do think that's very interesting for sure.
Right. Well, and the other thing about it is, and I tell people this, and I'm constantly reminding myself of this. You just talked about it a little bit. Even if you have it figured out, there's still the actual exercise or practice on a daily basis. It's kind of like the easy analogy that I use is lifting weights. Like knowing what to do is one thing, actually doing it is another. And
Yes.
whenever, whenever I get stuck, I always come back to that core practice of, who do I want to be? What are the qualities, characteristics, and attributes that I need to embody, and just writing them down, thinking about them, being conscious of instilling them into your core being. That's the daily practice. And, what's easy to do is easy not to do, like Jim Rohn said.
Right.
And so, hey, it's easy to pick up the weight and lift it a few times, but it's also easy not to do it. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And then 2020 I've gone through spurts of like working out every day, working out never. So this has just been a crazy year. Anyway, so I want to dig deeper into like what the messages are, because I was, like I said, I was going through your stuff last night when I found out that you were going to be my first guest here at the PodMax event. And I was reading through the bio. I read the short version and the long version. The one thing that stood out, and not just because it was bold and, italics and bigger than all the other text, was, "Hi, I'm Mark, and I'm a personal development junkie." What does that mean?
Well, I just have like this like voraciousness about about knowledge, really, about understanding things. I like to look at all spiritual traditions, all theologies. I'll grab it from, the Bhagavad Gita, the Bible, the Tao Te Ching. I want to grab it all, because what I found is that, like, if we have all the knowledge in front of us and we've got all the different perspectives of different people, we can kind of put it into our body wisdom and say, does this feel and sound right to me? And so I just love that. I love to know a lot of stuff. I want to know all about the human experience. I want to have the best possible experience. And of course that grew out of, not sharing that and not expressing myself for many years and not living my truth to the degree that I could have been. And I think that's an ongoing thing as well. But all of the things, back to what I was saying, it's all, really, I want to know these things. I need to learn these things. And I often struggle with either saying you need to do this and you need to do this. And then I also go back and forth to we, because I'm not perfect. I'm growing, I'm learning. And I've always been very conscious of that. I don't want to be that person that's like, you do this and this and this, because I need it, but I just want to know all this information. I find it fascinating.
How do you know when you're not living your true self?
That's a good question.
We ask hard-hitting questions on this show.
Yeah.
I don't know if you were ready for that. Yeah.
I wasn't, but I'm going to get ready real quick here.
All right.
Again, it goes back to the feeling, like back to the joy. When I'm living my true self, I'm really tuned in, and the vibration's really high. I feel really good. I recently found this idea that depression is the opposite of expression. I forget where I found that at, but I think that's awesome, because I think, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would definitely. Yeah, because at least for me, from a depression standpoint, it's like you kind of recluse, like, or whatever. Yeah,
pull in.
Yeah,
and there's another common idea that Abraham Hicks talks about, that we are joy looking for a way to express. And so I think just watching other people and my own experience when I'm not expressing, when I'm not creating, because creating anything is an expression. I don't think it has to be just talking or just writing. It can be anything, as long as you're expressing in the way that is right for you. So to answer your question, I think that when I'm not, the most alive and the most, vibrant person is when I'm too much in the head, too much repression, not enough expression,
Gotcha.
Can happen.
Okay. And then, so I'm interested more, because I know that you said that a lot of the stuff that you do is based on yourself. So what were when was it that you decided, like, hey, like how do you even realize it? Like when do you say, hey, this isn't me, I need to go do this because I know that this is gonna, fulfill me more,
That's another great question.
I told you, man.
Yeah. I think that the life is, if we stay aware and if we stay present, we're always going to move towards more in alignment with who we really are. Like, if we're constantly tuned into, hey, is this feeling good to me? Am I getting fulfillment? Am I finding meaning from this? And we're using that like guidance system, we're always going to be kind of on that path, being bumped along towards our final destination, which I believe is like true total alignment with who we really are, right? Spiritual beings enjoying this human experience. And so to answer your question, it's like sometimes we get down a road where we're like, okay, I think I want to do this thing, or I think I want to do this other thing. And we do that. And then we maybe get burned out on it for a while. Then that's a sign that, hey, you need to be doing something else. You need to change a little bit, do something different. Because when we start to diminish our enjoyment, that's definitely an indicator that we need to do a little change up. So that's how I look at it. And it was just moving forward, doing things like taking those steps. And eventually you just do what feels good, what you love and enjoy. I talk a lot about this because I want to share this message with younger generations. That's kind of one of the reasons why I think anyone does anything, right? They want to share best practices. And so if I could tell children or younger generations one thing's like, do what makes you come alive, the great Howard Thurman quote, what excites you, what brings you joy, what feels good. And so as I do that too, I know I'm on the right path. I know I'm heading in the right direction. Okay. It's a constant and evolving, unfolding.
Yeah. And then, so I'm curious to know, like, so you have these courses, right? So is there like a core message? Like I'm sure we've hit it many times and I'm sure you've said it, but like, because you have so much stuff, I'm just interested to see if there's like a common thread that kind of runs through all of them.
Yeah, there is. The common thread is that when we focus on creating our lives from within and doing that inner work and really leveraging that spiritual aspect of ourselves that is much more powerful than the cerebral or the mental or even the physical, when we use that to kind of pave our way through life, that makes life a lot easier. But also that we're creators and we can design our lives from a conscious standpoint, from a feelings, a vibrational standpoint. And again, that's the work that I want to learn how to do more. And that's the work that I want to share with the world, because in all my research, all my studies, life gets a lot easier when that happens, when we tune into who we are, when we leverage that spiritual aspect. And, the common theme is, living your life by design and not by default, as I'm kind of pushing in here to my core message.
Right. Okay. All right. Let's talk about focus and flow. So let's just tell me more about when you decided to go into like the apparel side of it, and then what the whole purpose of that was.
Yeah, that's another great question. So just to give you a little backstory, because of my design and art background, as a kid, I would spend hours and hours in my room copying the old school. I don't know how old you are, the Varney France.
I'm 30.
Oh, okay. So maybe you don't know what Varney is, but
I don't think so.
Basically old logos. I would copy these logos. I love graphic design. Like I said, I love creating stuff like that. So I'd spend hours and hours in my room drawing, creating different things. And so as I got on this path here, I knew I wanted some kind of component of that into my business. And so focus and flow, and I just should say it started as Reminders company, Reminders brand. And it was essentially reminders of our true nature, right? It evolved, had many different iterations. And finally, as ideas sometimes do, they go through processes, and it finally came into focus and flow, which is essentially, back to this idea of where energy, where focus goes, energy flows. And you want to give your energy to the things you want, not the things you don't want, that kind of thing. But essentially it's the blending. I don't know if you've heard of Justine Musk's Quora article about marrying two or having two idea babies.
Okay.
The focus and flow is essentially the graphic design aspect of myself, and then the spiritual, journey, business aspect, consciousness blended into a product and apparel line. So the messages on the shirts and the mugs are all, spiritual message, raise your vibration. Essentially that's the core of it. But essentially it's just, two idea babies of my own put together.
Yeah. So what was the one? The badass one? What was what's that one?
That badass conscious creator.
Yes, I love that. I think I'm going to get, I mean, because you were on the show, I think I have to get a shirt now. So
you do. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's going to be the one, or at least a hat, something.
I think you could rock that. I think you could definitely rock that logo. See, for me, I haven't even rocked that yet because, again, back to the baby steps.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like
But
there
you
was
could pull that off.
Yeah, there was one point during this year, and it's interesting to hear you kind of talk about this, and me kind of going through like my journey over the course of 2020, and kind of like I said, it was all out of necessity, but it was also something where it's weird. I was talking to my mom the other day, and she was listening to one of the episodes that I did, and obviously it's my mom, and she's biased because I'm the best, but she was saying how like, good she thought that the episode was. And I've been very happy with how the shows have been going and everything. And again, it's my mom and me. So whatever. So, but she was saying like, it's interesting that, it took a global pandemic to kind of figure out like, this could be something that I'm good at. And then there was like a certain point, like, at the beginning when I was talking to you about how we would do the LinkedIn videos, like I would put my suit on and like be very professional.
Mm-hmm.
All the barbershops here were closed and my hair was a mess. My beard was like down to here. So I like my head didn't look professional, but I had, the suit on. Granted,
From
I was
the neck
wearing,
down. Right?
yeah. Well, I was wearing shorts too, because it was only like belly button up.
Right.
But nobody needs to know that. Well, that'll stay our secret. So don't tell anybody.
I won't.
But yeah, so I at some point, I just said like, screw it. Like, I am just going to like lean into this as hard as I possibly can. And that's when, like, I always had the logo. The logo was there from the very beginning. Like I put it together,
it's a great logo.
Thank you.
Did you make it or did you have that made?
I made it.
Nice. Yeah. So you got some skills too. You got some graphics chops too.
You go online, you can find any, graphic designer type thing.
Yeah.
It's very misleading though, because I don't wear the earbuds anymore. And at some point, like I feel like everybody, maybe not you, because you look like you've already kind of done that. I shaved my head over the summer. Yeah. Cause I was like, I can't do this anymore. So I just went bald. I mean, granted, I was losing my hair anyway, so it was just
okay. That's why I did it. I was going to ask you, were you losing it already, or that's why I did it.
Yeah, I was like, why hold on to the remnants of a once great society of hair? Just
agreed.
Chop it down. Let's just go from there. So the logo is a little bit misleading, but it's just so interesting to hear you kind of talk about this stuff, because like I feel like I've been doing it, but not even knowing that I'm doing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we're all doing that same thing, just in different expressions, different ways, isn't it? That's why I love connecting, because we all have the same kind of story, just a little bit different.
Yeah,
the details are different.
Right. Yeah. So I was actually a guest. So today is December 4th. A guest on a podcast that aired on Monday, whatever Monday was, the last day of November of 2020, and it's mission driven. So at the end, you have to say what your mission is. And it's a friend of mine who hosts the show. And she was like, oh, you have to, tell me what your mission is at the end of the show. And I was like, I have no idea what my mission is, because like, I feel like it's something where, like I said before, it's like taking a lot of stuff, throw it against the wall, seeing what sticks. And then I really don't have like a plan per se. It's just kind of like figuring out as I go, which is, I think in a way kept me very like adaptable. So I'm like a chameleon. I could change my color like at the drop of a hat and do something else, or, but it sometimes feels like it would be nice to kind of have some type of plan or direction, so I can kind of like put all my, eventually it gets there. It's like, I talk about,
I was going to ask you, are you finding that it is coming into vision, your mission and your purpose, that kind of thing, as you move toward? I can see from my perspective, and this is always the thing, like when we look at someone else, we think they got all their what together, because you look like you have your what together. You look like a very clear purpose. So it's interesting. I always find that interesting. We're all struggling with these same things. Like, what am I doing? What do I want to do? It's just, I find it fascinating.
Yeah. So I have always described myself as someone that like, and this is, I mean, even before when I didn't really know much about myself, like if you put me if you put me on a tracks, you better get off the tracks, because the train's coming through and I am not stopping for anybody. Like I am getting it done, whatever it is. If it's just like finishing a task, doing a job, whatever it is. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it just like once I kind of get my mind set on something, it's just like full steam ahead, 100%. Doesn't matter what it is.
That's a good trait to have.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just a matter of like, it's just a matter of like getting on the right track sometimes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk more about the message type stuff, because I'm interested to see kind of, is there a way that you're able to tie all the stuff together? Because, like you have the apparel line, you have the blogs, you have the podcast, you have the books. And I know that there's like a general theme, of self-development and all that kind of stuff. But how do you kind of, this is more of like a business type question. How do you pull all those things in together to kind of make sure that they're all pulling on the same end?
Yeah, that's fair. Definitely. And the way that the basic, I guess, thing that ties them all together, the common thread is business and lifestyle design from the inside out, or living your life by design, that kind of a thing. And so every stream of content has something to do with that. Now, the On the Move is my car vlog series, where I essentially talk about the same things, just in different ways, different aspects, sharing knowledge. As you're a content creator. And so content is our daily path that we're walking. We just package it up in a way that's valuable and helpful to other people and ship it out. So all those different streams, or whether it's, my latest series is called Big Ideas, where I'm diving into books and movies and essays, pulling out the nuggets and sharing those big ideas with people. But again, those are the books that I love reading, that I talk about on the podcast and on the other series. So it's all kind of connected. But the idea is, lifestyle design, business design, because the other thing is, I want to, as I'm on this journey, like I mentioned earlier, when I started, I was like, I'm going to write some books about what I know and love. I'm going to ship them out. I'm going to sell them. I'm just going to kick back and let the money come in. And of course that did not happen.
No.
And, at the first I was like, okay, 90% of my time I was spent doing the thing that I was doing, writing the books, talking about what I loved, and doing 10%, say, marketing, branding, digital marketing, etc. It's totally flip-flopped now that I get my head on straight and realize if no one knows about what you're doing, they're not going to be able to buy it. It may be really helpful to them, but if they don't know about it. So now I've really dived into digital marketing and branding and content marketing. That's why all of these other YouTube streams and YouTube pieces of content are coming online, because I'm pushing more out into the universe with my content. And it's still so it's kind of flip-flop. 90% of my time I spend thinking about my brand, my content marketing, ways to share the message. And then 10 to 20% is, building courses, building books and stuff like that. It's interesting. And I found that I love that the thinking about the strategy. Of course I love the graphic design component, selling with those thumbnails and stuff like that. So it's kind of interesting. You called yourself a one-man show at the beginning too, and I definitely am as well. It's interesting because not everyone wants to do that. Not everyone. I have friends who are in the coaching space or the counseling space, and they're looking to get online. They don't want to make their own thumbnails. They don't want to do their own graphic design.
Right.
Where I feel really fortunate that I do love to do that, because if you don't like to do one component, you got to farm it out. And as I'm sure you've experienced, sometimes that's not a great experience. You kind of get,
you lose control.
You lose control.
Yeah.
And that's
it's your brand, right? Like the Morning Spotlight is me. My face is on it, literally. So I don't, I want to be able to control what's out there, what I put out there, all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. And I used to, because again, there's the common pervasive wisdom quote, so to speak, out in the universe of, hey, work on your business, don't work in it, quit doing everything. That all changed when I listened to Gene Simmons' book, How to Bring Out Your Inner Rock God. Have you heard of this book?
I love that. Yeah. I haven't read it, but because you just said Gene Simmons, I saw a Kiss concert a couple years ago. It was again, off track. Amazing. I'll let you finish your thought, but real quick. So I was living in Rochester, New York. A friend of mine was a radio show host. My roommate was a radio show host for ESPN in Rochester, and like the radio station would give out tickets every now and then for free. So there was Kiss tickets for Blue Cross Arena in Rochester, New York.
Wow.
And they were free. So he was like, "Do you want to go see Kiss?" And I was like, "I don't even know if I like Kiss." I know some songs, and so we took them. We went, and it was like amazing, because that was maybe like 3 years ago, or 4 years ago, whatever it is. So they're old. They absolutely rocked the house. And I realized I knew way more Kiss songs than I actually thought that I did.
Yeah. And that's definitely, that's not, I wasn't a Kiss fan. I know of them. I knew of them. I've seen them. I saw them years ago through another friend who's big time into the rock scene, but sounds similar to you. Like, I just love the theatrics of them.
Oh my God. They put on a show. Yeah.
Right. They put on a show, like they changed the industry.
Yeah.
And I'm always drawn to these people who are creators and entrepreneurs. And so, of course, Gene Simmons, what I've kind of really got into him when he was on The Apprentice, and I started seeing him. I'm like, who is this dude? I mean, he's got a business basically behind Kiss, as you probably know, is like this huge industry, multifaceted, like business industry. And so the reason that I bring him up is in his book, he talks about the fact that, he does a lot of his own graphic design. He does a lot of his own negotiating deals because he's tried to have other people do it and they never do it the way he wanted or the best way. And so I don't feel guilty about being a control freak anymore.
Yeah.
Because I just get a better result and I can get what I want,
Right. Because if you have a vision and you have an idea of like what you want it to be, like I have an idea of what I want the morning spotlight to be. So I need to make sure that it's, I'm doing the things that I think. Again, it's just getting on the right track, figuring out what that track is and getting on it, and then moving towards that end. So we're getting close to the end of the episode. We have about 7 minutes left. I'm going to go one more question, then we'll go into our closing segment. So because we're both content creators, right? There are most of the people that listen to my show are between the ages of 25 and 40-ish. So I'm sure a lot of them, especially this year, have either tried or thought about trying or are going to try putting out their own content because it's becoming almost imperative that you have that now. And I think the way that the whole world has changed is that you have to do that or else you're just going to adapt or you're going to die. Mm-hmm. So what are some, maybe some nuggets of advice that you have for people like us that put out content that are either trying to do that, want to do that, or interested in doing that? I've never thought about it, but maybe, you can give us some insight onto what you think they should be doing.
Sure. Well, if they're a beginner and they haven't done anything before, what I would recommend is that find something in your day-to-day experience, the path that you're walking, the life you've lived that is interesting or valuable or helpful in some way, because you can package that up into a piece of content. Basically, all we're doing is telling stories that resonate with other people. Years ago, John Ritter talked about plucking the string that connects us all. And so what string that you're walking on or walking through you can pluck that will resonate with other people. And in the beginning, like honestly, it may be ugly what you create. It may be just a mess.
It probably will be, honestly.
It probably will be, right?
Yeah.
I mean, but we have to go through that process. And that's another thing. Being okay with that, because I'm also a recovering perfectionist too. And so, talk about the growth of creating content. As you probably can attest, it doesn't get any better than putting yourself out there on the stage, so to speak, for people to look at and potentially judge your stuff, right?
Yeah.
You got to be okay with it. And that's a huge growing experience. I know it was for myself, but also for if these people are new, be okay with looking funny, making mistakes. Yeah. Because we got to go through that fire, right? Everyone has to go through that fire, right? And it like forges this iron will kind of a thing. And you're like, oh, I didn't die and I'm still here and I can still go forward. Because like you said, the world is changing in so many ways that because of automation, because of AI, because of a lot of these industries that are basically collapsing and being transformed, I think media and content and sharing ideas, changing hearts and minds is going to be the next big thing. And so the sooner you get on the bus, I think the better.
Absolutely. That's interesting because I mean, when I did the videos, like I started with the videos and I would, they were scripted and I would always give the guest or myself an opportunity. Like if we wanted to stop during the recording, we could, and then we'll cut it out and then start from someplace. So I had blooper stuff like minutes. I mean, I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but it is a lot in the grand scheme of things.
Right.
So what I did was on like holidays or days where I didn't want to post a video on LinkedIn because I knew it would just get lost. I would post blooper reels. So I made sure I cleared it with everybody and everybody was cool with it. Some people wanted to see what it was that I was putting out there, but a majority of it was just me like messing up, cursing. Obviously I would bleep it out. And those were by far the most popular videos that I put up there because like people just realized it was like I don't take myself too seriously. Neither do the people that I have on. And I think that especially now, because I think that people are just like, at least here in New Jersey, I don't know what it's like in Idaho. I've never been. But like people here at some point were just craving human connection in some way, and just being able to like sit and watch a 3-4 minute video and like laugh, because some of the stuff was hysterical.
Yeah.
And, like just laugh, like you just felt more connected to the people that you would watch on like the 4-minute, 5-minute boring, like I work at a bank and I do commercial real estate lending and blah, blah, blah. And, so it was just nice to kind of get that little change of pace. So
it's huge. Yeah. Those kind of things when we're being our silliest, and I've seen the exact same thing in my own experience, when you're not trying and you don't care about helping or selling or being valuable, a lot of times those resonate way more than trying to do that.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. So a couple more minutes. We're going to do our closing segment right now. It's Under the Spotlight. So we're going to put you under the spotlight. Everybody that's listening to this episode, we've been talking for almost the whole 50 minutes that we've been allotted. What is one thing that you want them to walk away from this episode with?
Well, be true to who you are. At the end of the day, whatever you're doing in life, if it's not for yourself first and foremost, it might not even be worth doing. That'd be what I'd say.
Amazing. So that is going to wrap up our show, because we're getting bumping up right against the end of our time that we have here together. Mark, this was awesome. For everybody listening, I'm going to make sure that I put all of Mark's stuff. And when I say all of his stuff, I'm going to put every link that he's got in the show notes. So Mark, you're going to have to send me all those, just so I don't make sure I don't miss any of them. So make sure you check out the books. They're on Amazon. Make sure you check out the website. Make sure you get some apparel. I'm going to order a t-shirt at the end of the day. Maybe a hat. I'm not sure. Maybe both. It is the holidays. I'll treat myself a little bit. But yeah, so everybody make sure you do that. Reach out to Mark if you have any questions. Make sure you check out his content on YouTube and podcasts and all that kind of stuff. So Mark, thank you so much for doing this. This was awesome.
Michael, thank you. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Had an awesome time. I'm nice to talk to you back there in New Jersey.
Absolutely. And everybody else, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.